It is my pleasure to introduce our fourth speaker, Dr. Norm Hoffman. He's the owner of Hoffman Chiropractic and Wellness Center here in Red Deer. He recently completed his diploma in neurology through the American Chiropractic Neurology Board, and he has been in private practice here in town for over 20 years. He graduated in 1994 with research honors and distinctions as a valedictorian and outstanding graduate. So he's one of those guys, very smart. Dr. Hoffman focuses his practice on neurologically complex and difficult cases, striving to improve his patients' quality of life and restore function. That's really key here. Absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Norm Hoffman to the stage, and he is one of our support team. So thank you, Dr. Norm. Welcome.
All right, well, we're going to see if does this mic work? This mic is working? Yes? Sounds good. Okay. Alrighty, so as Jack said, I last year finished my diplomat in neurology, which basically in the chiropractic world makes me a specialist in the field of the nervous system. In the same way, are we getting loud and getting more feedback? In the same way that a medical doctor would refer to a medical neurologist, I'm who your chiropractor should send you to if you were having a neurologic issue and not able to fix the problem. So I tend to focus on some specific things. What I wanted to do today was try to help everybody here to do something better with their brain, because I thought that might be a good idea. So the theme of the summit today is 10 years younger. So how many people here think that they would feel 10 years younger if their skin looked better? How many people think they would feel 10 years younger if they lost 10 pounds? How many people think they would feel 10 years younger if their brain worked better? All right. So I got enough people here to talk to. That's great. So there's a number of people here that looks like it might be a good idea. So let's see what we can do. All right, so what is your most important body part? When we talk to people on the street, if you ask them, well, you know, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Most people are mostly interested in heart health, right? Way to a man's stomach is, or way to a man's heart is through his stomach, right? Way to a woman's heart is through her brain, right? So the most important body part for sure is the brain. You're technically dead when your brain stops working, not when your heart stops working, which is why you can actually pull the heart out, put it on the table next to you, and put some kind of a mechanical thing in there. It doesn't really do a lot other than move the blood around so that your brain stays alive. Everything in your body is designed to make sure that it carries your brain around properly, okay? Dementia, however, is on the rise. The most common form of dementia is Alzheimer's. I think the staggering statistics of 1 in 8 over the age of 65. How many people here would like to have Alzheimer's over the age of 65? Not so many? Okay, well 1 in 8 of you are supposed to. I think that if we could do something about that, would that be a good thing? Yeah, okay, good. While other diseases are on the decline, let's see, right here. Look at this little portion of the chart here. While other diseases are on the decline, dementia is actually increasing sharply. So we're tackling all of these tough diseases, and Alzheimer's is going up by 46%. That's not so super fantastic. We all said we wanted to keep our brain, and yet it looks like that's not so good. All right, so what about early detection? Is there some early detection things that we can do? Yes, and we're going to do them today. So we've been talking all day about participation and doing things, and we've all had a nice big lunch, so we got a full belly and a sluggish afternoon thought. So we're going to stand up and we're going to do some things. So in a second, so we're going to be looking at postural things, and I want to explain some stuff to you about how your brain impacts your posture, and specifically your frontal lobes. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but your frontal lobes are really your human part. That's where you do all your thinking, planning. That's what makes you have a personality. That's where you do all of the stuff that's more than what a cat can do. And when you look at other animals that don't stand on 2 feet, all of them have the ability to have all of their flexors go in the same direction, so that when they're running, everything's moving in the same direction. But human beings, our flexors are this way. So our flexors come up this way and our flexors go back this way. So in actuality, we're designed to stand upright so that our extensors fire us up this way. If our extensor muscles are not firing properly, we go into this position. So as a baby, nobody's born walking. Why? Because you have a frontal lobe, but it isn't well enough developed to fire your extensor musculature enough to get you upright. I see kids all the time because I deal in neurologic issues. I see kids all the time who can't walk. They're 3 years old and they still can't walk. We get them, their brains working better in a week. We've got them walking. By doing nothing, no rehab with their muscles, but just getting the brain firing better, and it fires that extensor musculature so that all of a sudden they can stand upright. So we see as a baby we can't walk on two, and then as we get older, what happens to us? Well, we go into that flexor posturing again. Right? So it's the extensor musculature that actually fires us, allows us to be upright. And you'll see in any geriatric facility, you'll see everybody hunched over this way because the flexors overwhelm the extensors. If somebody has a stroke, when they can't use this arm, does it mostly just lay here? Or does it come up like this? It comes up like this. Or there's another version that comes back this way depending on where the stroke is. But you've seen this, right? And you've seen the legs go into this. Why does it do that? Because innately the flexors are more powerful than the extensors, and only when your brain works well do the extensors fire. So when you lose both the flexors and the extensors because your brain is down, the flexors win the battle, and they come into this. Okay? So it's the extensor musculature that is the essential part of that frontal lobe. And so we're going to stand up and look at people's posture and see what's going on. On the lower extremity, well, let's talk about the upper extremity first. So in the upper extremity, which part of my body, which part of me is my flexors going to be? Well, large muscle groups in the proximal area are going to be pecs and biceps, yes? Those are your flexors. These are your extensors, these are your flexors. So if I see somebody standing and their knuckles are in this way, if this is normal and my hands are hanging this way, if I see this, I know that my frontal lobes are probably not so super fantastic, and or my extensors are not firing for whatever reason. Maybe there's another reason, maybe there's trauma to the extensors, whatever it might be. But if this is a posture for somebody, there's a good probability that their brain may not be firing as good as it should be, right? Or that they may have overworked their flexors and underworked their extensors. But for the majority of us who are not, maybe power lifters, that may just be a fact of that brain not doing as well as it should. On the toe-in, toe-out side of things, where are the extensors as part of this? Well, what we see is, as Mel was alluding to earlier, we lose a lot of this hip rotator kind of stuff. And the upper aspect of the hips gives us a little bit of that rotation, or of a flexor kind of a thing. And so they will overpower the extensor side of things, and we'll see the toes come out. So as the brain comes down, and you can see this in stroke patients, so this is not something that is exclusive to what I'm talking about, but when the brain goes down, the toe goes out and the hand comes in. Now what if we see that on one side? If you haven't had a stroke, it's probably due to a brain problem on that side. So I'm going to have everybody find a partner, stand up, and we're going to take a look at that. We're also going to look at that head forward posture because, again, if we're not firing the extensors. So grab a buddy, stand up, and you're going to look at each other. Well, don't grab your buddy, but find a buddy. Work in either 2s or 3s, depending on how you can feel. We want to get through this fairly quickly. Take a partner A and a partner B. Your partners, okay? And then A is going to look at B. And B is just going to stand there, eyes closed, look up, look down, look to the left, look to the right, and then rest in a position and stay in that position. So, B's, close your eyes, look up, look down, look left, look right, stay in that position. Now, your partner's going to look forward. Is the head forward? Are the hands turned in? Are the feet turned out? If the head is forward of the shoulders, if the hands are really turned in, if the toes really turned out, is one side more than another? I'm seeing a lot of it from the stage here. Like I can pick out a whole bunch of you. All right, now switch. Go partner A and partner B. Okay? Okay, so partner A, look up, look down, close your eyes, look up, look down, look left, look right. Partner B, look at their posture. Do we see head forward posture? Do we see a toe turned out? Do we see a hand turned in? Okay, let's quickly have a seat. Okay, nobody fell over, that's really good. You're looking back and forth and you fall over, you're not doing it, so that's really good. All right. Hands nice and high. How many people saw something in their partner that wasn't right? Hands nice and high. How many people saw something in their partner that wasn't right? Okay, you should have seen it. You should have seen it with your partner because he's gorked. Okay? Majority of people here saw something, yes? Yeah, so as a group, would we say that as human beings, maybe we're not as tightly wound as we thought we were? Maybe there's a few things that maybe aren't as good as we would like them to be. Is that a possibility? Yeah, sure. So what are some things we can do about it? Well, that's what we want to get to. All right. So first I want you to understand some things really quickly. I'm going to go through some neuron theory. It's in your notes. I don't need you to memorize stuff, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from. So as far as you understand, neurons are the basic units of nerves. The neurons are the cells. The cells, it's a single cell. I actually do have a single cell that goes from here down to my toe. It's the longest single cell in your body, but that's one cell that goes all the way down the length of that, and it's in the sciatic nerve. Neurons are the basic units of the nerves. The neurons, however, are not static and unchanging. They're always dynamic and changing. Anybody ever been to the body exhibit? Seen those real live bodies kind of a thing? Have you noticed that the nerves, they look like ropes, right? They look like ropes coming from. These are living things and they are constantly in a state of change. They are not like rope. They actually are constantly living and changing. And I'm going to show you some evidence of that here in a second. I hope. All right. They're constantly seeking new connections. Their neurons' jobs are really to create new connections because new connections is how we learn anything. That's called neuroplasticity, and that is the new buzzword for probably the last 5 or 10 years of how we learn everything. What we were told when I first went to school, which is 21 years ago, is you're born with a brain. It doesn't have a lot of connections, but it has a lot of cells, and you basically prune it back as you get older, and you lose a bunch of cells, and that's how it is. But in fact, we're actually constantly seeking new connections, which is why you can teach an old dog new tricks, which is why you can learn something no matter how advanced you are. Those neurons are constantly seeking new connections, but the net effect of excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitter inputs is what determines the central integrative state. What does that mean in English? It means that if I've got a cell and I've got 20 connections to that cell, and 5 of them are telling it yes, and 7 of them are telling it no, it's probably not going to fire. Does that make sense? So every neuron is connected to a bunch of other stuff, and it's the net effect of a bunch of other stuff. So if I change a few of those no's to yeses, I change the net effect of the action of the cell, because all neurons fire yes or no. They don't fire maybe, they don't fire a little bit, they're all or none. Every neuron fires or it doesn't. That's it. Okay? It's a yes-no kind of a binary sort of a system. And so if we can determine whether or not that neuron is more likely to fire or less likely to fire, we can actually train things. All right, let's move on. Neurons require 2 things to grow. Now, you all said that you would like your brain working a little bit better. This is what I'm talking about. In order for neurons to grow, and that neuron growth is in the connections. It's in the dendritic and the axonal connections. It's in the number of connections. It's in the type of connections. That's what we mean by neuron growth. It requires 2 things. It requires stimulation. In other words, it requires that that neuron be fired. How many people here, maybe it's been a while since you fired a neuron? All right? It requires fuel. What is fuel? Well, fuel means 2 things. It means oxygen, and it means sugar. Now, I know all of you have been told that sugar is bad, and I'm not suggesting that you go eat some sugar so it's good for your brain. I mean the glucose that's in your bloodstream, right? So you can get glucose in your bloodstream by eating healthy. And in fact, if you ate a donut, what happens to the brain? Well, you fire a lot of glucose all at once and you feel great. Anybody ever had that experience? Only Jack. Jack is the only person that's ever eaten a donut and felt better afterwards, right? How many people have eaten a donut and felt better? Yeah, of course, right? Why? Because you get a big sugar rush in the brain gets lots of fuel. What happens 20 minutes later? Crash, and I feel terrible. Why? Because my brain just ran out of glucose, because my insulin stores came up, grabbed all the glucose, shoved it into storage, and now I'm fatter, and my brain is slow. Right? So not so super fantastic. So what's good for the brain is a steady state of blood sugar that doesn't vary a whole lot. That's why small, low glycemic meals are better than great big high glycemic meals. Does that make sense? It's better for your brain. Okay? All right. In the absence of stimulation, the neurons fail to grow. And in fact, in the absence of stimulation, the neurons will actually retract. So I want to show you just something, just so you can get a visual of a neuron. So this is a petri dish. Oh, if it works. Oh boy, I was promised it would work. It might work. Here we go. So this is a petri dish of a neuron cell. So that little guy with looks like a happy face, that's a neuron cell. And you can see he's connected up to another neuron cell up there. But he's constantly in a state of looking for new connections. And he comes down here and he thinks he's found a connection. And he's pretty happy about it. And he says, nah. And then he goes over here and he says, maybe you'll connect with me. Now, maybe I'll go back to this first guy. I'll check out on him again. No, maybe, oh, well, no, I don't know. You see how the dendrite is getting longer. And now he kept a connection with that. See how he's got a connection over there now? Now he's looking for another connection. Our neurons are constantly looking for connections. If you think your brain's not doing anything out there, this is what it's doing. It's constantly looking for new ways to connect. But we need to talk about how we can stimulate that so that we can all be brighter and sharper in our minds. All right, this is what I mean by nerve degeneration. If you do not fire a nerve, it becomes like this guy. So you see this is the cell body of a good neuron. It has this nice dark substance in it, and it has the nucleus is right in the center of the cell. That is a healthy neuron. This is a neuron that has undergone what's called transneuronal degeneration. This is if you do not fire the nerve, it loses its proteins. If it loses its proteins, it starts to pull on water. If it starts to pull on water, the cell body gets this massive of stuff that isn't full of all of this dark stuff. So the dark stuff would be the proteins. This is a neuron that is not getting that fired, so the proteins disintegrate. And you'll see the nucleus is way off to the side. It's not in the center because it's being pushed off by this bolus of water. What that basically means is that that neuron is pretty much useless. And if you fired it, it has a really good chance of just popping and dying. That's not so super fantastic. If you've ever known anybody that's had a brain injury, if you push them too hard, they don't do so well. They get headaches, they get nauseous, they get anxiety attacks. Why? Because you're pushing neurons that look like this as if they were normal. It doesn't work. Okay? You can't do it. You have to rehab them at a level that they can tolerate. And that's what we do at my office. All right. Transneuronal degeneration is essentially if this neuron fires this neuron, which fires this neuron, and this neuron is not doing its job properly, then eventually, if we get rid of this guy, the one before and the one after are eventually going to disintegrate because it's no longer being activated. So by getting rid of a neuron that's not functioning. So if I have a pathway in my brain that I used to use and I no longer use it, it starts to erode. If I have a pathway I've never formed really well because of whatever reasons, and there's a lot that can go on behind that, then I have neurons in my brain that have never really been fired really well, and that might explain a whole lot of things. All right. So I want to go through the... Oh, there's a timer up here, but I didn't actually start it, so I have no idea how much time I've got left. Cool. So somebody's going to have to go like this when I'm done. All right. All right. Whoa, I want to go back. All right. So I want to go through the brain really quickly. It's in your notes. It's even in color. That's pretty cool. And you can find it in your swag bag. So everybody reach into your swag bag, and in there you'll see a brochure from my office. Looks like it has a cell phone on the front of it. Okay? And open it up and you'll see a picture of a brain inside. So I've given you at least 3 ways to access this information. It's on the slides and it's in your notes. It's in the brochure to a lesser extent. Obviously, we don't want to put everything in there. And I also, on my website, have an interactive brain. So if you're really interested in this topic, you can go to the interactive brain, click on a part of the brain that will tell you what it does and what damage in that area does for you. Okay? And at the end of this, you might even be interested in that. All right, so the frontal lobe, main functions are, as I said further, making you a human being. Your functions are around thinking and sequencing and everything a cat can't do. Expressing language, emotional expression. You can have emotions without a frontal lobe, but you can't express them properly. You can't identify them properly. Okay? You can't control them properly. So impulse control lives up in there. All the regulating type functions live up in that. That is the most advanced part of the human being, and it's what allows you to override some of the older phylogenetic parts. Damage up in that area might include weakness and paralysis, because that's your movement bit. Your frontal lobe is what causes you to move. So a cat has a frontal lobe, so it can move, and it has a frontal lobe so it can move its eyeballs, but it doesn't have the prefrontal stuff that allows it to do the thinking bits. So you might have difficulty with fine motor skills. You might have a difficulty with planning a sequence of tasks. Have you ever had your kid and you said, I want you to go to your room and I want you to pick up this and then I want you to bring it to the laundry room and then I want you to come over here and I want you to pick up that and do that? Now, how well did they do with that? Right? Probably not so good until they were much, much older, and even then, right? But as the brain develops, you can handle multiple sequences of tasks. If you have damage, you can have obsessive compulsive tendencies. It tends to live up in there. There's a very specific part in the middle part of the brain that's associated with that. Changes in social behavior, mood, and personality. Somebody has a stroke, their personality might for sure change, depending on where the stroke is, of course. Difficulty with concentration, memory, problem solving. So even if you don't have a stroke, is it possible to damage this part of your brain? Yes or no? Yes, absolutely. Is it possible that it never developed properly in the first place because the connections to it from other parts weren't good? Yes. So maybe the frontal lobe, in your case, maybe it's your husband, were not developed so super well because there was an injury to something that feeds into this. And the cerebellum is one of the primary areas that feeds into the frontal lobes. All right. And then there's the prefrontal problems. And again, I wrote these down for you. You don't need to memorize all the big words, but understand that different parts of the prefrontal cortex are associated with different types of prefrontal syndromes. In kids, we tend to see attention deficit type 1, type 2, and then we'll just see kids that just don't care. And those are all different aspects of the brain, of the prefrontal cortex. Language and math difficulties tend to live entirely on the left. So I've had cases that have come in, and the kids got a 43% in math. They're failing math. Now, if you know anything about today's school system, it's impossible to fail. You just can't fail. It's part of the mandate is that they pass all the kids. So she was getting a 43%. That's pretty tough to do. All I did was stimulate her left brain, and all of a sudden, by the fall, she was getting A's and B's and everything in math. And she was failing it, and all I did was work on her left brain. So that's pretty cool stuff. Parietal lobe, that sits more up on top here. That is responsible for your position, your space, your feel. It actually feels stuff. And it has a perception of time and distance and speed of movement. So one of the tricks we use in our office to measure the parietal lobe is an object moving across your visual field. And what we use an infrared camera on the eye measuring how your eye is responding to that. So it's a really nice test of that parietal lobe function. Mm-hmm. Damage to the left parietal lobe creates different stuff than damage to the right parietal lobe. Some of you may have seen some of the stuff out on Google and Facebook and stuff like that where, there's no such thing as a left brain and a right brain person. How many people have seen that? The little meme that's going around? Seen a few things like that? It is absolutely true that you use your entire brain for everything, but it's absolutely true that you will lose certain functions if you lose functions on the left versus if you lose them on the right. It does change things where you have your damage. So just so you're aware that there is some difference between the left and right. All right, main functions of the temporal lobes. They sit on the side. They are associated with music, sound, voice, all of that sort of thing. Smell, emotion, and memory live in there. So have you ever noticed that smell and emotion and memory and music all tend to go together? And they go together really well because they live in the same part of the brain. So if we wanted to have a better memory, how many people here would like to have a better memory? Yeah. If you listen to more and different types of music, maybe that would improve that. If you introduced smells that were different and new and were not toxic, that maybe that would improve things. There's certainly some smells I wouldn't recommend trying to improve your memory with. But they did tests on kids that are in school, and they put peppermint on their hand, and they had them smell while they were studying, and then they go and take the test, and they smell while they're studying, and they get better marks on their test. Is that cool? That's cool, right? So this stuff is plastic, it can be changed. Damage in the temporal lobe, behavioral, auditory, processing issues, impaired memory, all of that kind of stuff. And as we get older, don't we usually not want to lose our memory? Isn't that one of the things that people don't want to see? So there's some things that you have to do here, because the temporal lobe is not associated with some of the stuff that goes on with other things. So if you are doing really well with certain parts of your brain, like you're being really active, and so you're activating your cerebellum, which is feeding up into your frontal lobes, and your parietal lobes are getting all juiced because you're feeling the ground and you're feeling the weights and the bands and the whatever you're using, your auditory cortex may not be getting a whole lot of juice out of that, right? So that's an aspect that we're going to talk about here in a second. All right, the back lobe in the brain, the occipital lobe, that's associated with visual processing, and if you have a problem there, you will have a problem with visual processing. It's really, really complicated. All right, moving on. The cerebellum sits at the back of the brain right here, and it is responsible for coordination, balance, motor tone, that sort of a thing. You've ever driven anywhere and wondered how you got there? That's happened to you too, right? That's your cerebellum. Your cerebellum knows how to do things you've done 100 times, and it just can do them automatically. If you have a tennis player and they hit that ball, and no matter how fast it comes at them, they manage to hit it every time because they've done it so many times, they're not thinking about how to hit the ball. I've got to hold my hand here, and then I've got to turn it. No, it's all automatic. All those automatic functions come out of the cerebellum. There are more connections in the cerebellum, which is that tiny little nugget here, than there are in the entire rest of your brain. If you did nothing more than improve the function of your cerebellum, you'd probably improve your life dramatically. Damage in the cerebellum causes loss of coordination, tremor, staggering, anything that you will see in a drunk person. Right? So go outside a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning, watch people go by. That is a study in cerebellar deficits. Okay? Slurred speech, inability to change their course, all of that kind of fun stuff. But we can measure it in the office using eye movements again, because if there's an inaccuracy or lack of coordination with the eye movements, we can look at the cerebellum as one of the possible culprits of that. So it's a really fantastic window into that function for us. The brainstem controls everything that keeps you alive. Breathing, heart rate, your state of arousal, which is your awakeness, right? How many people here are tired? How many people here have too much tired in their life? Okay, so about half the room. I wonder why they're not exercising, Jack. They're tired, right? They're tired because maybe their brainstem's not working so super well. So the brainstem might be one of the things you want to get doing better. Anybody here know somebody that's got high blood pressure, that maybe has circulation issues, they got cold fingers, they got sweaty palms? Anybody that's having difficulty with digestion? Anybody having difficulty with sleep? Guess where your problem is? It's in the brainstem, right? That's where all of this stuff lives. And if you've got all or a majority of the things I just mentioned, chances are you got a dysautonomia associated with your brainstem. Some people call it anxiety. Here's what anxiety is. Somebody's coming at me with a knife, I'm anxious, right? I'm sitting at the table with my friends having a good time, and all of a sudden my heart starts pounding and my palms start sweating, and I got no particular reason for doing it, but I feel like I'm freaking out. That's a dysautonomia. It's a disproportionate reaction to the autonomic nervous system because there was no reason for it, right? So understand that dysautonomias happen all of the time. It's probably one of the most common things I see in my office, because how many people have digestive issues? How many people have sleep issues? How many people have difficulty with fatigue? I mean, it's rampant, and this brainstem is at the heart of it all. Dysfunction in the brainstem, well, problem in everything we just talked about. We want to keep moving because we've got lots of stuff to cover here. All right, so in case you weren't aware of it, neurologic conditions that respond favorably to exercise. So these are all the reasons you should exercise, because if you exercise, you have decreased incidences of all of these things. Why is that? Well, let me explain it to you. So your brain does not receive messages from space that keep you alive. Your brain actually responds to the messages that come up from your body. Those are the things that fire your brain. So you are in a gravitational state right now, which means that those neurons that are associated with graviception, proprioception, joint position, muscle movement, and all of those things are firing 24 hours a day. You'll power down to go to sleep. Your visual stimulation will come to a minimum. Your auditory stimulation will come to a minimum. Your smell should hopefully come to a minimum. All of those senses go to a minimum, but your position sense doesn't. The largest neurons in your body carry position sense. Roger Sperry, PhD, says 90% of the brain is concerned about position sense. So guess what fires your brain? position sense. So guess what happens to your brain if you do nothing and sit around all day? It goes down, it declines. Your brain will automatically, naturally has to decline if you don't do anything all day. Has to. So how many of us have jobs where you sit and you don't move your position sense all day? A few, for sure, right? How many of you do the same thing that you've been doing for the last number of years and you do the same thing over and over and over again? Okay? Some of the rest of the room. So the reason that those things are important is because if you don't do something, that's bad. If you don't do something new and different, that's bad too. Okay? But we can prevent a lot of that stuff if we do the right things. I'll repeat it again. Your neurons require two things to grow. They require stimulation and they require fuel. In the absence of these, neural degeneration occurs. All right. So what am I talking about in terms of stimulation? Stimulation to the brain. Different things will stimulate the brain. Novelty is one of the highest stimulations to the brain. Something new. Do you know that right now, most people that apply to my office stay at their previous jobs an average of 2 years? They're looking for something new. When I ask people, why are you looking for a new job? I'm just looking for something new, right? We get bored with what we're doing, we look for something new. How many people are in their marriage and they're not really happy because they're just looking for something new? Right? So understand that we are craving novelty all of the time. If you give your brain novelty in other areas, it won't have to make you quit your job or quit your marriage or quit your life, right? So you want to make sure that novelty is an aspect of your daily life as much as you possibly can. Intensity will also stimulate the nervous system. How many people can remember something from their childhood? How many people that was intense? Whatever you remember from your childhood. Yeah, because how do we remember it from your childhood? Because it was intense, right? Probably emotionally intense. That's why we remember it. How many people remember their ABCs? How many people remember them because it was emotionally intense that you remember your ABCs? Probably not. So we remember our ABCs because of repetition. And we can increase the stimulation to our brain, as I said before about the central integrative state, that neurons have multiple inputs coming in, that if you can stimulate that neuron from different ways, you can fire that neuron at a higher level. If you can fire it at a higher level, it has more likelihood to fire the genes that create more proteins that create that neuron that make it happy and healthy. Okay? So I know that the temporal lobe is fired by sound in the opposite ear and smell in the same side. So if I knew that I had a left temporal issue and I put smell in the same side and music in the opposite ear, I have a greater probability of firing the left temporal lobe. If I do that and then do a chiropractic adjustment on the right side, which has a tendency to impact the left brain, I have an even greater chance, because I've used now 3 modalities, to fire the left brain in a specific area called the temporal lobe. You see how I could change a temporal lobe lesion by using different modalities of stimulation. Pretty cool. All right. Next. All right. So I want to give you guys some ideas of what brain-friendly exercise looks like versus brain-not-so-friendly exercise looks like. So on my least list is walking. But understand that if you've been sitting on the couch and doing nothing, walking is tremendously brain stimulating because your other alternative was sitting watching Seinfeld reruns, right? So walking relative to some of this other stuff is not so brain friendly because it's uniplanar and it's not so interesting, right? It's just kind of this, right? But it's a whole lot better than doing nothing. So if you're going to do nothing, do that instead, right? Okay. Repetitive weightlifting. If I do the same activity over and over again, day in, day out, I'm just going to do the same thing. My brain and nervous system is going to shut down. Any of you ever seen like a real live bodybuilder that wasn't so super bright because maybe they seem to do the same activities over and over again and the brain starts to go down? Versus your personal trainers that you come to know and love who are really sharp and on the ball because they're constantly doing different things all the time, right? Right? Yeah, see? There you go. All right. Long distance running. For those of you that are long distance runners and love it, please don't throw things at me. It is not brain friendly to do long distance running. If you're running long distances, you will shut the brain down because you're doing the same repetitive activity over and over and over again. And you know why long distance runners love it? Because it shuts their brain down, so they can't think anymore. And that's cool for them. right? But there may be a better way to do that. The brains of long-distance people, not as good as they should be. Something you should be aware of, not judging, just saying. Cycling, the same thing, because you're getting that uniplanar kind of thing going on and on. However, now, let's take the long-distance running and throw it up the side of this hill with these obstacles, and let's interval it with some sprints versus that sort of a thing, and make it more interesting, more tactile, more proprioceptive, different, having to adapt to different terrains, all that stuff, brain stimulating. Very brain friendly. Let's take the cycling and let's turn it into something that actually has some kind of an interest to it. If you are even trying to beat a time, and you're trying different courses, and you're trying different ways of getting there, you're going to do better than if you just go around in the same circle over and over. Right? If you go up to the Collicut and you just run the track over and over and over again for like an hour, that's not good for you. Right? I mean, it's better than sitting on the couch eating bonbons. But it's not the best for you. Okay? All right, what's the most friendly? Intervals, changing it up. High variability weight training, so again, that's why your personal trainer is trying to keep it interesting for you. Dance, gymnastics, Pilates, anything where your body is trying to learn a new skill would be fantastic. Rock climbing and hiking, because you have to engage something to be able to do these things. If you can do it half asleep, you're probably not making a good activity. I love to say that if you're on the treadmill and you're reading, you're not doing it right, because you should not be able to do that. Okay, if it's requiring so little of you that you can read while you're doing it, you're doing something wrong. Okay, but again, better than doing nothing if we're on the scale. All right, so think novel, interesting, multiplanar, multi-joint, multi-sensory. Those are the things I want you to keep in mind. I'm running out of time.
Nope, you're good.
All right, brain-friendly living. So that's just the exercise world. What about your life? The worst things you can do are routine, boring, pain, pleasure driven, because the pain, pleasure centers of your brain are deep in the middle, in the limbic system, and the amygdala and all of that kind of wonderful fun stuff that has nothing to do with your frontal lobes. So if you're just reacting to what's in front of you, your life's going to be that of a mammal. Right? That hurts, I'm not going to do that. That feels good, I'm going to do that. Right? If you're doing that in your life, you're living the mammalian existence, which is me, not as exciting. I'd rather live as a human. If you're isolating yourself from other people, that's a bad thing. Social contact is fantastically stimulating for the brain. This is a great opportunity for you to network, right? If your life is just stagnant. All right, so best for your brain in your life is new sights and sounds, purpose-driven. Okay, that does not mean going and getting a new girlfriend, right? We talked about that. Find other ways to get that. But if you do the other things, then you don't need the other. All right, purpose-driven. That means decide now what it is that you want to do, and then do that. That is very prefrontal. It's very good for the very front part of your brains, which will keep you alive longer, okay? Keep you upright longer. Multisensory, do things that you haven't done before. There's a lovely little book, How to Keep Your Brain Alive, and it talks about, having one of those kids' books where they have the sensory type things and, trying to feel things like that. And, okay, today I've got cinnamon in the diffuser, and tomorrow I've got peppermint in the diffuser, and, keeping it going that way. So just keep different things going on in your life. Does that require work? Yeah, but you know what happens if you don't work? You don't work at it. Find something you can find a sense of accomplishment. Can you accomplish something if you don't have a purpose and a goal towards it? No. Can you establish a purpose and a goal if you don't have a prefrontal cortex? No. So use your prefrontal cortex, establish a purpose and a goal, and then feel the sense of accomplishment that comes with it. And joy is the complete opposite of pain, pleasure driven. Pleasure feels good. Joy is deeply satisfying, and there's a difference. And if you know what I'm talking about, you'll seek that out versus the other. Each part of your brain needs something different, so we need to get into that. So these are in your notes. Your frontal lobe, if you want to do work on something for your frontal lobe. Everybody here said they want to do something to help their brain. So here's some things. If you did everything on this list on a rotational basis, you'd be laughing. So movement's very good for the frontal lobe because it fires the cerebellum, that fires the frontal lobe. Imagination, creativity type stuff. Do something artistic. If you're creating something out of nothing, that requires your frontal lobe. Future planning, we talked about that. Fast eye movements, that's what we do in the office for therapy for frontal lobes. We do fast eye movements if their frontal lobes are strong enough to handle it. Otherwise, it can be very, very detrimental. We don't want to overcook some people. Some people's frontal lobes are really, really bad, and if you directly stimulate them with fast eye movements, they'll crater. It's really amazing. Parietal lobe, we said that was up on here. That's what to do with your distance and feelings. So mazes, touch, judging distance and timing. That kind of a thing is where working with a trainer or that sort of thing can be a very good thing because you're having to jump from here to there. You would never necessarily do that on your own, but somebody tells you you have to jump from here to there. You got to judge the distance all of a sudden, right? Timing would be like catch this one, then catch that one, or clap in time with the beat to something, right? All of those things. When was the last time you clapped in time with a beat to something? Maybe it's been a while, right? So we understand that if we don't use these things, those parts of our brain aren't getting fired. Temporal lobe, we talked about music, we talked about smells, tastes, emotions, all of that sort of a thing. Who doesn't want this life, right? But how many of us are actually living that life? In my experience, not as many as who say they would like it. Occipital lobe, that's your visual context. So when you go for your run or whatever you're going to do, make it visually interesting. Take new pathways. Go through the trees, go through the autumn leaves, all of that kind of fun stuff, right? Moving targets is fantastic. Baseball is fantastic in terms of trying to track a moving target. When was the last time anybody here played ball, right? If you didn't play ball recently, play ball. It's a new, wonderful, novel thing that maybe you probably used to be good at, and maybe you can reinforce those pathways, and all of a sudden now they're boosting you. They're keeping you going, right? Not so many 50, 60-year-olds, or even 40-year-olds, sometimes even 30-year-olds, are playing ball. And it doesn't have to be going and joining a competitive league. Just, go out and find your other 40, 30-year-old friend that wants to get their brain better and throw the ball around. Stupid, but actually really, really good. Really, really good for you. All right. Or the medicine ball if you prefer something heavier and larger. All right, cerebellum. We said all of this stuff that has to do with movement and coordinated activity drives into the cerebellum. So anybody here ever been to a chiropractor? Almost everybody, perfect. So you guys are all wellness people to start with and you already understand that sort of things. But did you understand that your chiropractic adjustment is driving the cerebellum on the same side? So if you have a low cerebellum on your right and you get a chiropractic adjustment on the right, you're driving your right cerebellum and that's doing a good thing for you. If you've ever been to a chiropractor and they adjusted you this way, and then they adjusted you this way, and then they adjusted you 3 times up the middle, and then they adjusted you this way, and then they adjusted you that way, which side of the cerebellum are they firing? Both, right? Is that a good thing? Might be. If you've got this and you go to there, that's a very good thing for you. But what if you've got this? This is not so super fantastic. I mean, it's better, but it's not driving the difference between the two. So we want to make sure that if we have a deficit, that we identify it and that we make it better. Brainstem. There are some specific things that you can do in there for brainstem. I said a lot of the people in here might be having issues with brainstem, so that focused breathing, in for 4, out for 8, just because you're focusing on it, you're working on some aspects of the brainstem that go with conscious breathing, because there's 2 types of breathing in the brain, the unconscious and the conscious. You can work on the brainstem with the conscious breathing aspect of things. Peripheral visual stimulation, in other words, this kind of a thing, something out here, you have to be in the real world for that in order to happen. You can't be in the virtual world and see something out in here and have it catch your attention. The same thing with peripheral auditory stimulation. If you're on a team and you're playing football, this stuff's happening all the time. Cerebellar stimulation, frontal stimulation, all of those things will drive brainstem function. And it comes down to figuring out what areas you may not have working as well as you should. The last few slides on here aren't going to make any sense to you, so I'm going to try to make them make sense to you. What we're looking at here are people looking at fast eye movement targets. So they're on the right, then they're on the left, then they're on the right, then they're on the left, and they are always at 20 degrees. So where should the target land? It should land at 20 degrees. This is a person who's actually fairly decent. This is a fairly decent look at this. We do this in my office with all of our new patients as an aspect of looking at how that frontal lobe and how that cerebellum is working, because it gives us an idea of whether or not their accuracy, whether or not they've got speed and velocity with those fast eye movements. So it gives us a window into the frontal lobe and the cerebellum. This is normal, this is normal, this is a different way of looking at the exact same patient, so same patient. Okay, this is a different patient, also fairly normal. Little bit of overshoots, there's a double bump in here a little bit of overshoot on this. Understand that the red ones represent eye movements to the left, so that's probably more your right brain. The green ones represent eye movements to the right, so that's more your left brain. So those are all, this is the same patient as the last one. Fairly normal, got a little distracted in here, kind of lost it a little bit, but that's still fairly normal. That's not normal. So if anybody wants to tell me that the left brain and the right brain on every individual is doing the exact same thing, I beg to differ. Okay? This individual is having some massive overshoots with their right brain and some massive undershoots, or with their left brain and some massive undershoots with their right brain. Their two sides of their brain are not doing the same thing. Should this patient be getting the same thing on this side as they're getting on this side? Absolutely not. Are they going to get better if they do? Absolutely not. There's no way. There's no possibility. Same exact patient, looking at that information. Look at how fast these eye movements are going up into the 700 degrees per second. Look at this patient, or the same patient. His other eye movements were only 400. So one direction is 700, the other direction is 400. Is this person going to feel good? No, they've got anxiety, sleep problems. They've got issues with all kinds of gut issues, all kinds of sleep problems, so on and so forth, because they've got dysautonomic functions. Different patient. Is the left side and the right side doing the same thing? Not at all. And look at the right side here is kind of clumped. The left side strings from one end all the way to the other. The left side has no idea where it's going. That's probably a cerebellar aspect, right? The cerebellum adds to the accuracy. This person is not doing so super well. Same person, different graph. This is a different patient. Are the left brain and the right brain doing the same thing? No, absolutely not. Same person. That person, is their left brain and their right brain doing the same thing? Absolutely. Is it good? No. This person came in with massive brain global issues and didn't even know it. Okay? They had no idea. They think they're fine. If somebody's got a brain issue, do they know that they've got a problem? No, because they think they're fine. Because what are they using to determine if they're fine? Their brain, which isn't working right, which tells them that they're fine. You ever watched like Intervention or an addict show, or ever known an addict? They're fine. Are they fine? Probably not, right? But they think they're fine because they're using their brain to determine if they're fine. Not so super accurate as a tool, so we have other tools to measure that. Okay, same patient, same patient. All right, at this point I normally want to take a volunteer, but I don't know that I have time, so maybe I can just get questions. Okay, cool. So, why don't I do that? Why don't I take like 5 minutes for the guinea pig thing? Is there anybody here that suspects that they might have something wrong with their brain, and doesn't mind being embarrassed in front of a group of their peers? Do I have a volunteer at all? Okay. You. Give them a hand for being brave. All right, coming up where everybody can see it, and we're going to try to see if we can improve your observational skills so that you can see what I see. Because I'm not seeing anything that isn't there, I'm just seeing what's there. So you're going to stand right there, just look at them. Don't look at me, look at them. All right, does anybody see a hand that's turned in? Yeah, which hand? Left. Okay, is it a possibility that he might have a brain issue as a result of seeing something like that? It's a possibility, right? We don't know yet. Is his head forward of his shoulder? Turn to the side so they can see. Absolutely, right? His right foot turns out. Could it be a hip issue? Could be a hip issue. Could it be a brain issue? Could be. We don't know yet. So I said extensor musculature was very, very important in frontal lobe stuff. So you're going to stick your hands out. And the frontal lobe of the brain is more closely attached to the extensor issues associated with the distal studs of the fingers, right? Your brain's more associated with this. Your cerebellum's more associated with what goes on in your shoulders. So we want to look at his brain function. We just want to see, is there a possible issue there? Well, that's not so super fantastic. That one is good. That one is not so super fantastic. Which side did he have the hand turned in on? His left, right? So he's got extensor weakness on that side. Now, is it due to his fingers? Is it due to his shoulders? Is it due to his brain? We don't know. So let's find out. Let's go up to his shoulder. How strong are you there? I can do chin-ups off that. Okay, so that's not it. But if I go to his fingers, he has absolutely no power in there whatsoever. Okay, so is it coming from his fingers? Maybe he's got a finger problem, right? Probably not. Or is it coming from his brain? So this is on a different nerve than the extensors for the fingers. Is the thumb strong? Not so perfect. Hold this thumb up. How's that one work? That's not so good. That's perfect. That one is not so fantastic, right? Okay? So you're going to have to tell them because they can't see your toes. Hold this big toe up. Hold it up strong. Good. Hold that one up. Well, they can't see your toes. So that toe's quite weak. Now, is there any nerve in the body that controls the extension of the thumb, the extension of the fingers, and the extension of the toes? Say no. No, there's no single nerve that controls that, right? So it's got to be coming from his brain. We've established at this point that there's a very, very high likelihood that he's got a brain issue associated with the left side. Have you had a stroke?
No.
No, so it's probably not the right side of his brain, it's probably the left side, because when you have a left side brain weakness, you'll have left side soft signs, okay, just like he's got here. So I want to see if his brain can handle direct stimulation or if I want to do this from a back channel. So look at my nose. When I wiggle a finger, you look at the finger that wiggles. Okay, no, you actually have to look. Okay, try it again. Let's turn just so people can see. Just turn this way, okay? Just so people can see a little bit. I don't know if they can see it. Okay? Can you see what difficulty he has in moving his eyes? Can you see that at all from here? I wish I had my big camera that you guys could see this kind of stuff. He's not. Did you see him move his head? Yeah. He can't move his eyes so good, so he's moving his head to recruit. Right? His eyes aren't moving hardly at all. I'll turn you this way and see if you can see if anybody in the front row can see. Okay? Okay. Look over my butt. Right. Can anybody see? This is my butt, but don't look at it. All right. Okay. So look up here. See that? Okay? He went to look at it and he went. Right? He recruited a whole pile of face musculature, some neck musculature, and the eye still didn't move. Okay? Those fast eye movements are driven by the frontal lobe, which is the same side of this. So I think we might be able to do something to get his brain doing a little bit better. So let's try a couple of things. I said that the opposite side cerebellum controls this brain. I said this side of his brain is probably not working because of the extensors on this side. So I'm going to come to this hand, and I'm going to just do a weird figure 80 kind of movement on this side. This is going to tell his cerebellum, something's happening. Something's happening. It doesn't know what, but something's happening. Pull these up. We're strong. Oh, wow. Is that better? Yeah, that's pretty good, right? Hold this up. We're strong. Hold this up. Good. Turn face the people. Okay. No, he's still cake. Trying to go that way. It's going to take more work. But we can get the finger strength up. Let's see how long it lasted. Well, it's still going. Okay, that's a temporary fix. That's not going to last for too terribly long because did it have a lot of novelty? A little bit, but not a lot, right? Did it have any intensity? Probably not. Did we repeat it very often? Not really. Was it multimodal? Not really. So is it very stimulating to that part of the brain? Not a lot. So it's pretty safe for me to do up here and not really worry too much about things. But it's probably not going to last either. But if we know that he's got an issue in there, maybe we should fix it. And I love you, and I don't even know you, but you should get your frontal lobe fixed. Okay, give him a hand. And what you didn't know from coming up here is his hands are really sweaty. Now you might say, well, that's because he's going up on stage. But it might also be because his frontal lobe is not inhibiting his autonomic system, and his autonomic system's having problems. Have you got issues with sleep, guts, a little bit of motivational issues, that kind of thing? Yeah, totally, yeah. So we're on target, right? Okay, so questions, I guess?
Yep. You got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah. ADHD, what about it?
Do you have success rate?
Oh my goodness. So if you want to know about ADHD, you go to my website and you click on the testimonials or success stories page, and then you go down to something called Removing Roadblocks to Learning, and you'll see 11 testimonials in a row dealing with ADHD, autism, learning disabilities. I got a guy that's 40 years old, couldn't read. Within 2 months, I had him reading to his children every night. That's pretty fun, right? That's good stuff, right? That pulls at my heartstrings, right? This is why I do this stuff. But why? Because we talk about the ADHD, it lives in that prefrontal lobe, right? If you never drive the prefrontal lobe, it won't happen on its own. The prefrontal lobe is a very special little aspect that, again, we're the only animals on the planet that have got a prefrontal lobe, and so we have to be able to fire it very specifically to get that going. But you know what? We're surrounded by a bunch of neurotoxic junk that wants to decrease our neural ability to create more connections, and so as a race, as a species, we're having more and more neurologic problems because our brains aren't able to make the connections they used to, so we kind of have to force it now. That's why Alzheimer's is on the rise, and autism is on the rise, and every neural disorder on the planet is on the rise. right? We're poisoning ourselves, and I don't think we have control over it in this room, so we're going to have to do some things to protect ourselves the best we can. Yeah?
Just one piece of advice for a teacher in a classroom when it comes to mastery of tasks for kids. Do you teach the same task in one place and then move them to a new environment? Will that stimulate something?
That would.
Or help them to
That's a great question. I would find different colors to teach them in. I would find different media to teach them in. So it's a video one day, it's an audio the next day. I would turn the classroom sideways the next day. Absolutely. Change the placement of everything. The more often things change around, the more likely we are to be able to be awake and to be able to learn. But you know, you're going to take them off guard. If you do the same thing, how many people enjoyed the class where they were taught in the same monotonous kind of way over and over and over again? And how many people enjoyed the teacher who spiced things up? Right? I did. Right? So, I mean, we know that inherently, and it improves learning. Absolutely. Absolutely. The more you change things up, the better. If you can teach from this angle to today and teach the exact same concept at a right angle to it tomorrow, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
More questions, guys?
Yeah, I have one more question. You said about I understand the benefits of changing up your workouts and all that things and doing things that challenge your mind, but how do you explain when you go for a run or something that is relatively mindless, you have personally I have the best ideas, the most creativity when I'm out for a run and doing something that is a bit more stagnant,
Yeah?
but you still stimulate the brain in a different way. So, and I understand what you're saying about doing things that are novel and exciting and everything like that to stimulate and to grow your brain. But how does that work? Because I think a lot of us experience that sort of, if you do feel smarter, more productive, and all those other things that happen from giving more mindless exercise.
So how long are you doing that for? How long is the run?
It could be usually up to an hour, but it's usually the latter part that's when I really start to things really start to happen.
Okay. Do you find that in your life as a whole you feel kind of like a hyperish kind of a person, kind of like difficulty sitting still or anything like that?
Definitely difficulty sitting still.
Right, so there are aspects of the central part of the brain called the basal ganglia that associate with direct and indirect pathways that are associated with the natural inclination to do or to not do. So when I go to touch this, I have a part of my brain that goes, do it, don't do it. Do it, don't do it. So there's a loop, right? So it closes the end of that loop. Some people have a predisposition towards hyperkinesis. They have a predisposition towards doing more, right? And you will find that they're constantly trying to do something that maybe they shouldn't even be doing, but they're just the goers of the kind of the thing. Those people tend to find that mind-numbing activities are really fantastic for them because it actually brings them down to a state where they can get into the theta wave aspects. They can get down into areas where their brain was firing maybe too much, and we brought it down into that, right? But where you cross the line is where you're now taking and driving the brain in the other direction. So if your brain's already half-caked and you do that long-distance running, it isn't going to make it better, it's going to make it worse. But if you're the kind of person that's got to, blow off a bunch of energy and then you kind of come down into the zone, then that probably means that your resting state is in that hyperkinetic, direct basal ganglionic type of aspect. You might have restless legs, you might have a tendency to sit there and kind of go like this, or you're constantly tapping the pan, kind of an idea. And if you notice that's the case, long distance running to a point will always bring that down to a level. In the same way that other forms of sort of stationary type activity would. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Over here.
Okay.
Your broad suggestions seem to make a lot of sense in regards to stimulating the brain, but as part of your practice, what kind of therapies or treatments in that do you work with patients in terms of overcoming some of those areas that you've identified?
That's a great question. So in my practice, if you watch the parade of things that goes on, everybody gets something different. So this person might get vestibular stimulation, we might spin them in the chair. The next person might get an optokinetic with like stripes on a tape where you kind of pull that in front of their eyes. Another person's watching an iPad and they're watching little dots go up this way and come down this way, and little fast dots go up this way and slow ones come down this way. The next person's over in the corner with a little tuning fork in their ear. I mean, there's a variety of different things. I've got somatic stimulation where we do electrical stimulations into the face that are great for brainstem stimulation. So everything's different depending on what we find. So my exam is typically an hour to 2 hours long, especially with a really complex case. If somebody comes in, they got simple, mechanical, low back pain, you know, we can figure that out fairly quickly. But if somebody's got a really complex history and we've got to work it through, it could take 2 hours or longer. As we go through each and every area of the brain and every aspect that we can get to, and we say, this is our target. And then we say, well, these are the things we think might work for that. It might be movement, it might be light, it might be sound, it might be visual stimulation. We then engage that patient in that and then check the findings again to see if it made it better. And if it does, there's your guide. And if it doesn't, we find something else. Does that help? Okay. Cool. Cool. Okay.
You described my wife a little bit when you said insomniac with sweaty palms.
There you go.
She's a beautiful woman and I love her.
She's a beautiful insomniac. Absolutely. She glows.
Right. So I'm wondering about A, success rate, and B, I know every case is individual, but the success you can see with that and perhaps length of time for particular treatment.
Yeah, I mean, dysautonomias come in all kinds of flavors, but I'm really pretty good with them. I mean, the most complex of the complex of autonomic disorders is called complex regional pain syndrome, can't even remember the old name for it, but they call it complex regional pain now. Basically, where you have an autonomic issue that goes down into one leg so badly that touching it is excruciating. It turns wonderful shades of black and blue and all kinds of things, but it's so bad that the blood supply is cut off into that leg. And we've been able to get those people better. So the regular run-of-the-mill, sleep guts, painful periods, tiny bladder syndrome, which is usually a sympathetic, parasympathetic dysautonomia kind of deal, those are usually pretty slam dunk to me.
And I mean, like, how much change you see from like one treatment versus say 5, 10, and so on?
Oh, I see what you're saying. In terms of like it's very different. We normally see improvements within the first 5 treatments, and then the ongoingness of that is dependent on the person's choices.
Thank you.
Yeah.